Put your hand up if, as a newer runner or even more experienced runner, that you've been told to build your aerobic base in order to be a better runner.
Or if you've been told that you need to run slow in order to get fast.
In theory, these are correct, but there are a few big problems with this theory that we need to tell you about. So here are the big problems with running slowly to get fast,
with the 6 solutions that you need.
One of the biggest problems we see with people running slow to get fast is that people don't actually know what running slow means. This is definitely a problem with many beginner runners, and it's kind of like a rite of passage when you work out about the benefits and the how to running slow. The reason you need to run slow is so that your body is effectively training its aerobic base. It needs to learn how to take in oxygen and use it. And if you're pushing the speed or running too fast, then your body's working on other things instead, so you're not getting the benefits of that. So how do you know if you're running slow enough? Well, there's 4 things that you could take note of to check on your speed. It's not to do with pace or heart rate because it's very individual to everyone. Number 1, you should be able to effectively breathe through your nose. So running with your mouth closed and feeling quite comfortable. Number 2, be able to hold a conversation, a bit like I am now. Having a chat if you're running with someone, or just acknowledging that you would be able to if you're running on your own. Number 3, you should feel a little bit guilty. You should feel like, is this okay? Am I running hard enough? Because the real slow pace feels really comfortable and will almost give you a sense of guilt. And number 4, if you're scoring your run out of 10 in terms of how hard you're running, it should be at about a 5 or a 6. So hopefully those 4 tips will help you get your slow running slow enough, and so your body can reap the benefits.
And the exact opposite of not training slow enough is also not training fast enough. But I'm gonna need to explain this one. And to put it simply, our body works on a number of different energy systems. So if you only train on the energy system that works when you're running really slowly, then you're missing out 2 of the other systems that can complement this base training. I like to imagine them as 3 different pieces of a puzzle, and you need all 3 pieces to complete the puzzle, if that makes sense. Ooh, it's like a fridge in here. I've got the air conditioning fully on because I'm training for New York Marathon as well, and we're about to do some intervals to prove my point. So when you run slow enough, you're working on your aerobic base, which is your body's ability to take in oxygen and distribute it around the body to fuel that easy run. But also, if you're running a little bit harder or very hard, you're working on different things like your body's ability to get rid of lactate that it accumulates if you've ever felt the muscle burn, or worse, the top end ability, like the maximum amount of the oxygen that your body can breathe in and use, and that's your VO2 max. But you need to work on these 2 other aspects, lactate threshold and VO2 max, to complement the aerobic base. So what you see me doing here is intervals, but at my kind of marathon pace, which is around my lactate threshold. So today, I'm doing 12 blocks of 1 kilometre, working at around my lactate threshold to try and push it up to increase my tolerance to run at this speed for New York Marathon. And then there are times earlier in the season, before I go into like full marathon block training, where I might even do punchier stuff like 400 metre repeats, 800 metre repeats, kilometre repeats, but at a faster pace, like my 5 or 10k pace. So I mix it up, but I make sure that I feel that feeling of running hard, the feeling of speed in my legs, which I think the body remembers and the body needs if you truly want to run fast.
So I'm going to give you a scenario and you tell me if you've never done this. And if you tell me you've never done this, I'm going to accuse you of lying.
I'm just kidding. But seriously.
Have you ever been out on a run and either seen a car coming towards you or a runner and you speed up? Just that little bit. You clean up your technique and you try to look as runner as possible. Or worse, you see a runner just ahead of you and you speed up that little bit to try and catch them. Well, that's your ego getting involved a little bit. And to some extent it's natural. We're all a little competitive or vain and we do stuff like this. But the problem with this when it comes to trying to run slow is that a lot of new runners feel like running has to be painful, or to make progress you have to feel like you're pushing yourself, or you judge yourself against what others think. How can they be a runner going that slow? But the madness of building an aerobic base is that the comfort zone of most inexperienced runners is pushing too hard because of the ego. And actually, running really easy is very uncomfortable for most. So let's have a look at what the pros do about it. Let's take, for example, the Ethiopian elite runners who run marathons and half marathons at about 3 minutes per kilometre or even faster. Surely their easy runs would be around 4 or even 5 minutes per kilometre. Try 7 or even slower, barely above walking. On their allocated pure recovery runs, a lot of elite African runners almost play a game where they see how little distance they can cover in their 40 minutes or so of running. Not how far they can go, how little distance they can cover. Because ego plays no part. They save the hard or the fast stuff for the hard or fast sessions. And actually, what you begin to realise as you go through this journey is that there are many different slow styles of running that you can do to keep your slow run slow but interesting. And ego needs to play no part in any of it.
I actually think this might be the biggest problem of all of the problems of running slow, and that's that people don't realise just how much bandwidth they have within the slow to run. And I often get people commenting on videos saying how frustrated they are having to run to this or that pace. But I'm going to run you through what aerobic training is to me and the different paces that I can still achieve within that. And I think you might be surprised. And I'm going to use me and my running as an example of my aerobic base over time that I've built and the types of speeds that I can run at within my zones 1 and 2 or aerobic base. And if you want to know how to calculate it properly, not relying on your Garmin, then there's going to be a video at the end of this video that you can click on, and I'll probably link it up here as well too if I can remember. Right. Okay, Ben's aerobic base. Let's start with the probably longest race I've ever done and slowest race I've ever done, which was UTMB in December, and I covered the 100 kilometers at an average of 12 minutes per kilometer, and that, believe it or not, is my zone 1 and 2, anything beyond that as well, of course. But then I look at Sean Conway when Mary and I ran a marathon with Sean very recently, or my 50 kilometer ultra that I did in October, again both around 7 minutes per kilometer in terms of speed, heart rate comfortably sitting in zone 2. And what about my easy base run? So the runs that I go on most in the week when I go out, my easy base runs staying in zone 2, they're about 5 minutes a kilometer, still comfortably sitting in zone 2. And then when I'm training hard for marathons, in my marathon long runs at the weekend, believe it or not, still in zone 2. And I'm traveling at around 4:15 per kilometer to 4:10 per kilometer and getting faster. So I'm gonna put that there. That's still zone 2. And then I'm just gonna put the race paces just here. They're just outside of zone 2 into zone 3 and 4. But you can see what a small area those race paces inhabit in comparison to my aerobic base zones. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to move my marathon race pace as far into zone 2 as I possibly can as well. And you might have heard of MAF training, which really restricts your heart rate. But I think if you learn what your bandwidth is, there's no doubt MAF can have an effect and it can improve your training. But I actually just think aerobic base training is better because you've got much more bandwidth to stay in. You just got to do it right. So there's many different speeds in your slow run. And another big problem with this running slow malarkey is that when you're out there, and afterwards actually, people don't often rely on the data that is at their disposal to make sure it's the right slow, and then of course use it to confirm they're on the right track. So thanks to a lifetime of running, I'm now in a place where I know kind of what pace equals which heart rate zones, what's easy, what's working my aerobic base. But as we've already spoken about, ego can really easily get into the mix. And when that happens, you can quite quickly find yourself not doing the right thing out there. So the data while I'm in the run is relying on my heart rate, is knowing right now I'm well within zone 2, I'm absolutely fine. And I know not everybody likes using data or heart rate data, but if you ever find that your ego is taking over, like mine does sometimes, and you can't rely on those strategies that Mary provided you in the first point, like 6 out of 10 breathing through the nose, then this is one way to guarantee that you're squeezing the juice out of every session, that you're doing the right thing in the right places. So while you want to use the data whilst you're in the run to make sure you're doing the right thing, equally as important for me is using the data after the run to confirm you're doing the right thing and on the right track overall. So after the runs, I come in and I tend to do two things. I sit down and I go through the session that I've just done and make sure that everything was right when I talk about being in my aerobic base zones. So first of all, I'm going on to training peaks just to check out each kilometre. Yep, all perfectly in zone 2, so that's a win. But then on top of that, I want to show you this as well. This is my app that gives me all my data from many, many years. And if you can see here, you can see that year on year, my heart rate has fell, proving to me that I'm doing the right thing. So I'm using data to back up each individual session, but also all of the long-term stuff as well. And although I know not everyone likes data, for me it's just a way of streamlining my process, making sure I'm being smart with my training and getting where I want to be as quickly as possible, but without rushing, if that makes sense. And the final big problem with running slow to get fast is that people just don't have enough faith in the process. And what do I mean by that? Well, look at it this way, results don't happen overnight. There's a really famous quote from Usain Bolt that I love that said he trained for 4 years to be able to run 9 seconds. When you think about it, what he's really saying is that he trusted his 4 years to being able to achieve that long-term outcome. And whilst I'm not saying you're gonna see no results in 4 years if you go into aerobic base training, what I am saying is that results and progress does take time. It's not gonna take one block of 4 weeks to make that progress that you want, and it's probably one of the biggest hurdles I have with the people that I coach is convincing them to trust me, trust the process. Take Mary for example. Luckily she trusts me implicitly because we're married. She kind of has to. No, that's a joke. But she trusts me. So I was able to assure her that the way that she was training is the way that she will see the biggest results. And year on year, she just keeps getting better. If you've been with the channel for a long time, you will have seen where she started her journey, only being able to run less than 5 kilometers. To now thinking nothing of me and her going out and running a marathon with Sean Conway, or just running 30 kilometers at the weekend we've just done. Now she's in a place where she's able to do that because she's trusted the process, she's maintained running slowly, building that base, and then she's put the faster stuff on top of it. But we're still talking 5 years that she's continued to trust this process and is still making progress. So what I would implore any runner that has just started to genuinely engage in the run slow to get fast mantra is judge it over a year. Look back after a year. Don't think even in terms of months, not even 6 months. I would say you will see some results, but you'll see the biggest results after a season when you've been able to put races on top, see what you can do in races and how you feel, or punchier sessions now might become easy because you've been building the bigger aerobic base underneath. So have faith, because it works. And I really want you to be better runners. And there you have it, all done. Hopefully you've learned a little something new today, and if I've missed anything, let me know in the comments. And hopefully I've convinced you to subscribe to the channel. And if you liked this video, then you're definitely gonna like this one, which is the big problem with starting running as an adult. And hopefully that's gonna give you an insight if you've just begun running into what's coming ahead. And the other video is how you calculate your heart rate zones properly and don't leave it up to your watch to decide for you. Thanks for watching. See you Wednesday.